The COYGIG Pod
on Off the Ball
in association with Cadbury, official snack partner of the Republic of Ireland women's national team.
Katie McCabe, a huge goal.
I'm very proud of the team's performance.
We're going to go out there to beat them. We're going to try and beat them.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the COYGIG podcast. I'm Kathleen McNamee, and this week I am joined by PML's one and only Karen Duggan and our new becoming friend of the podcast after we used it the last couple of weeks, Girls on the Ball, Rachel O'Sullivan. Guys, how are we feeling? How are we doing? Rachel, you're not in as quite fancy surroundings as you were the last time we were talking to you, although we do spy some England jerseys in the background there.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, I'm not. I'm back in England again, no longer in the fancy streets of Paris, I'm afraid.
Did you have a nice experience jaunting around Europe for the couple of days?
Yeah, well, the first part of it was good. We were meant to go to Germany and then they cancelled our flight. So it was kind of half of what we expected, but it was all right. We got home early, so I can't complain.
I was wondering, because I saw on your Instagram that you were obviously in Paris and then you'd said you were going to Germany and then I didn't see anything about it. And I was like, I wonder, did they actually make it or not?
That's what happened.
There's my
Airlines. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Karen, you're filling the swanky side of things this week since you were chilling with the president.
Not right now, as you can see, like the background. Not right now. But yeah, I had a.
So that's not what the inside of Oris on Uachtaráin looks like.
No, this is not the inside of Oris. It's somewhat more refined, the inside of Oris. But yeah, no, we had the kind of media build up for the President's Cup because obviously the men's kicks off next week, and then the women's is the first week in March. Yeah, so it was pretty nice. Had a cup of tea with Michael D himself. So
wow,
take that on a Tuesday morning.
The most important question: did you get to see the dogs?
No. So this is what we found out. Mishnok is he's a COVID dog. He's not the most sociable, but he's getting better apparently.
Okay.
But wasn't up for us today, unfortunately, which was, it was a big disappointment. But I suppose the actual president himself will have to do.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. You are a bit of a rowdy bunch, so I don't know if you'd want to put
not today.
Through that.
Not today. No. different side of me today.
I very much wish I was there just to see you like sitting politely at a table beside the president, just kind of like sipping on a tiny cup of tea, being like, "Oh, this is a new one."
That's what how I'm being extra polite is like they offered food and I said no. I would never say no in normal circumstances. Yeah.
Just in case the president asks you a question and you're like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And how are you feeling in the run up to the actual game itself?
Yeah, it's a nice game, I think, because it kind of gives you a gauge of where you are as you head into the season. Obviously, you're up against last year's cup winners. Athlone won this last year. It's their second year in a row in it. And it's nice to be competing for silverware straight off the bat. You kind of hope that winning becomes a habit, but it's, like I said, it's a reward for all of the work and effort you put into achieving what you did the previous season. So yeah, it's lovely to be part of, but it is a showpiece, as well at the same time. Like we won't let it dictate our whole season.
But it is good, as you say, to have that opportunity to get a bit of silverware straight off the bat. And I suppose, Rachel, as well, like having competitions like that gives more opportunity to showcase players that are here in Ireland, and also more opportunities for players to going into the league to get the opportunity to showcase themselves, to say, put their hand up and be like, I've worked really hard in pre-season and this is what I can do in a game that does actually have something at the end of it. Yeah,
like as you said it's about kind of gauging where you are, but also for the team themselves gauging where players are in the lead up to the season as well. So yeah, it's a good opportunity. And as you say, I think starting the season with a bit of silverware is always a good way of doing it too, right?
Yeah, because a lot of the preseason play you are rotating because you want to try new things and you want to, just give everyone match time so that they're getting up to the pace. But then this is like this is my starting 11. Let's see how they get on. And if not, we've a week to change things. So we'll see how that goes.
A week is loads of time. Loads of time.
Once it doesn't go to penalties down in Athlone again, sweet.
Yeah, I don't think we want to traumatize you quite so early in the season with penalties before the league has actually started itself. Yeah. Well, since we've last recorded, we have announced another game for the upcoming February international window, and this one is in the lovely city of Florence against Italy. Rachel, this is kind of the sort of fixture I think that maybe we were hoping would come, in that it's a bit closer to the challenge that we think this team needs if they are going to go into League A and do something. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, there aren't a lot of teams available right now because there's so many other bits going on, whether it's, you know, trying to be promoted or trying to prevent relegation, or whether it's the, you know, the top four battling it out to win the Nations League. So, you know, top opposition was going to be difficult to come by, and you've got everyone in America involved in their cup as well. So yeah, Italy's a good one. Italy's a funny team. I feel like never quite achieved what they could, but can then like turn around and overachieve in a match. Do you know what I mean? They're a bit of a weird team to kind of gauge. They've got some good quality in there, but then like I remember watching them get absolutely battered by France in the Euros, and you're like, what the hell's going on? So it's a tough one to kind of gauge how they'll do, to be totally honest. That's how I felt whenever I saw it being announced. I was like, Italy. This is definitely closer to what I expected than, say, Wales as an opponent. But also, as you say, they've been so inconsistent over the years. And even when you look at the development of the league itself in Italy, that has been so inconsistent over the years, with some clubs flying ahead and other ones lagging behind. You know, we had Louise Quinn, whenever she went from Arsenal over to Italy, talking about like the completely different like access to facilities and access to training and access to physios or whatever it might be that she was used to. So yeah, it's one that I hope is a good challenge for us, and I hope like the good Italy team turn up on the day, and the one that give us a bit of an opportunity to have a run out, because I don't know if we're going to get fully what we need just from the Wales game. Karen, I don't know what you think in terms of the two matches. Like, is there a good balance there between something that'll be a bit challenging and maybe something that's kind of alongside the, I don't want to say confidence boosters, because like Wales could very easily beat us as well.
Yeah, I actually do think it's a good balance. I still think Italy are more developed than we are, in a sense, because their league is further along than we are. The last couple of times we've played them, they beat us or it was a draw. So it's a good I think it's a good litmus test to see if we have surpassed a team who we have been in and around for quite some time, whether we have actually kicked on. Okay, we made a major tournament. Italy were at the Euros and stuff as well. Like I wouldn't say that we're head and shoulders above them. I think we've got better players individually, but I think it's a really interesting matchup, actually.
Yeah, no, it's one I'm looking forward to. Actually, it's actually a game as well I'm going into looking forward to it as much to see how Italy have progressed and where they're at, whereas with the Welsh game, I'm probably more interested solely just to see how we do and how we perform in that game. Some good news for Irish players over the weekend in terms of going into those international fixtures. Izzy Atkinson getting her first goal in her appearance with Crystal Palace, also played the full game. Hilly Nolan starting there too. We saw Jessie Stapleton starting for Reading. So we talked about this last week about how important it was for these players to be getting game time, Rachel, and straight off the back, you know, they're getting full games, they're getting goals. So a good start.
Yeah, and important games as well in the championship, like for Reading.
The championship this weekend was like mental.
It's wild. Every week someone's done something different. Like the top five are separated by 5 points, and they just keep swapping places. Like it's mad to have a 5-horse race still, like this far into the season. And then at the bottom you've got Watford beating Birmingham. You know, Michelle Aguimang is back for Watford, which could be massive for them in terms of staying up. So like the championship is where it's at, because I think it's about 8 points between sixth and bottom of the table and 5 points between top five. Like it's mad to think. And I was talking to Annabelle Johnson from Crystal Palace actually today, and she was kind of talking about the fact that it's almost because no one is like really far and away running away with the league. No one's being consistent. So not only are they getting game time, but they're important matches as well. Reading's trying to stay up because they're getting dragged down into the relegation battle, and Crystal Palace are in and around that 5-horse race.
Yeah, it's one of those leagues that you look at and you're like, almost, I don't know, does it need some sort of like playoff system or something just to like add, so that a bit like the men's championship where you have that thing of that you can have a couple of teams up there kind of close into it, but also you could be the team that come 5th or 6th and yet you're still the ones that are actually progressing. So be very interested to see how that goes and see how all the Irish ones do. A couple of people were asking us during the week what the crack was with Grace Maloney. She appeared again at the weekend. She'd been injured, for anyone that was wondering about that. Just a quick run through some of the fixtures that are coming up this week. So Conti Cup tomorrow, we have London City Lionesses facing off against Arsenal, Chelsea, Sunderland, Tottenham City is kind of probably the big name one, but Brighton, Aston Villa could be very interesting considering what those two are doing in the league at the moment and the fact that doing well in the cup,
or what they're not doing in the league.
Yeah, what they're not doing in the league could become very, very important. And then, of course, we also had the Champions League draw on Tuesday. So that's SK Brann facing off against Barcelona, Ajax versus Chelsea, Benfica versus Lyon, and then Hacken versus PSG, which also means that Emma Hayes will have to go through either Brann or Barcelona if she gets past Ajax to make the Champions League final. So it looks kind of written in the stars a little bit for Rachel, wasn't it?
I feel like Wolfsburg used to be Chelsea's like bogey team in the Champions League, where they would just always be drawn against them and Wolfsburg would just knock them out all the time. I feel like Barcelona has become that team now. I guess some people are looking at it saying, you know, harder to beat Barcelona over 2 legs than it is 1 leg. I remember when Chelsea got to that final against Barcelona, and I remember looking at it and thinking Chelsea actually needed a second leg, because in every game up to that final, they improved in the second leg. They always played better in the second leg. And it was almost like they learned from the first leg into the second, whereas they just had that one game in the final and bam, Barcelona just ran over them in about 20 minutes. So actually, you know, should they beat Ajax, both games, the second game is a home game, which I think could be really beneficial for them, because I'd rather it that way, stay in the tie in the first leg, and then anything can happen at home. You're playing at Stamford Bridge. But yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves. They still have to get past Ajax, who got out of the hardest group in that. And I don't know if you're watching that last game unfold with Bayern at one point at the top, then they were at the bottom, then they were third, then they were back top again, and then they ended up out of the competition. It's wild.
You might as well have just watched the table and not the football. Like, it was so entertaining.
It was as good, yeah.
Yeah. Which is exactly what we want from the Champions League, especially when, I suppose, for those who are more used to watching the English sides, only having Chelsea in it at the moment, some fans may have lost a bit of interest, but it just goes to show you that it is very much worth still paying attention. So we are going to move on now to our team of the week. Emma Carroll is not with us tonight. She had other very busy and important things to do, but she did send through a team, so I will run through it and then we can discuss it. So in goal, she has Liz Kopp, then Hawa Sissoko, Maya Letizier, and Alex Greenwood. She has Katrina Gari and Hanoka Hayashi in midfield, Gize, Erin Cuthbert, and and Riki, and then Nikita Paris and Vivian Issei up front. Karen, thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it was kind of as I expected, seeing a large West Ham contingency in there, and particularly seeing Hayashi and Gari. They bullied Arsenal, and it's not often you kind of say that about a team, but we were speaking about the inevitable upward trajectory that West Ham would go on because of the players they signed. I think Gari is typifying that. She's a nightmare. She's everywhere. You know, she covers every blade of grass. So I expected to see her. I think this might be a first appearance in Team of the Week for JC, because I think as a United fan, we've been waiting for her to really ignite. And Emma Byrne always said she is probably better coming in off the right because she's not as natural a finisher. And that's why, as a United fan, we were screaming out for a striker to be signed. But Nikita Paris is obviously filling that role I think it should be a temporary thing, but she's been, you can't argue with the stats she's put up in the last little while. So yeah, I can't really argue with too many. I think possibly, do you fit another Chelsea person in there? Maybe Niamh Charles, just considering how comprehensive they were. Also, we had a debut from Ramirez, and she is terrifying. She's absolutely terrifying. So she could have been in with a shout, but I don't think you can take away from any of the West Ham people there. So I understand why they were left out.
Yeah, I was reading a couple of pieces about her ahead of the weekend, and the fact that she doesn't actually have any English. And Emma Hayes is like, it's all right, we all speak the language of football. And I was like, what does that mean in Emma Hayes' terms? You know, I'd love to see how those communications are going to go and develop. And when it is like properly established, the relationships that can be built on the pitch, obviously that takes time. And if the language barrier is there as well, it might take a little bit more time.
I think it's very easy to play with someone who can skin players the way that she did down that right-hand side. She was leaving those Everton girls in her wake. And then you've got players who can always finish at Chelsea. You know, they're always willing participants in the attack. Chelsea don't need to drag everyone back in the same way someone like United would. So they're always going to have players up there to support her.
Definitely. Rachel, what about you? What were your thoughts?
Well, I will say one thing about Ramirez is that the handy thing is that Emma Hayes speaks Spanish. So at least of all the people she needs to understand, at least the manager speaks Spanish. And I can also confirm, as a photographer sitting pitch side at Chelsea, having Mayra Ramirez run at you at like 100 miles an hour is frightening. So I can only imagine if you're a defender and she's coming at you, if she doesn't get the ball past you, she's going to body you off it anyway. So yeah, she made an incredible debut. I'm pretty happy.
You a helmet or something, Rachel,
well,
when you're on the side.
You know, sometimes with the very short sidelines, it is a bit scary at times. I'm pretty, I think that team's pretty good. Probably the defence is the only area that I'm a bit like, you know, Greenwood, Letizia. I know for Man United that Brighton had a couple of forays forward. They had 2 shots on target, but I think after like the 34th minute, that was the last time they had a shot on target. Alex Greenwood, again, Leicester did not look in any way really interested in actually attacking. They had no shots on target. They created 1 chance. So my only thing would be, how much really did Greenwood have to do? But, you know, maybe Natalie Bjorn, or as you said, Niamh Charles could maybe slot in there. But other than that, I thought Sissoko as well, another shout out for her. I thought she was excellent. And her and Hayashi were probably players of the match for me, followed closely by Gori. I think she's really made a home for herself in West Ham. She looks like she's been there forever. So yeah, I think I know she got the penalty, but actually her defensive work after they went ahead was so important to West Ham actually keeping that lead, because once they went ahead, she was able to drop a little bit deeper and provide that support. So yeah, I think Jay-Z and Paris, really nice partnership, you know, forming between them as well. As you said, something that maybe United have been missing this season. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good team. I think Kopp and goal. Who knew? Like, Willie Kirk's brought in another unbelievable goalkeeper. Like the two of them.
Mrs. Calling.
Like, you know, I thought Emma Hayes loved all the goalkeepers, but actually Willie Kirk's doing a pretty good job of bringing in some top goalkeepers. So yeah, she's been great.
I saw a couple of pieces after the weekend, Rachel speculating about Nikita Paris and whether she'd kind of put her hand up for England contention again, having been kind of on the outskirts of it for a while. Obviously, it's such a strong team. It's really, really difficult to kind of worm your way in there. And Serena Wiegmann is very strong on who she likes in her team. But do you think there's any sort of merit to her being a consideration after her last couple of games?
Yeah, I think some of the problems England have had in the past is putting the ball in the back of the net. You know, they've dominated games and not been able to score. They need someone in that role to be able to finish. Nikita Paris is doing that right now. She's doing it better, arguably, say, than Alessia Russo. Now, I know Alessia Russo does an awful lot more off the ball and does a lot of her own work setting up other players, but you know, that competition could be useful. I think she'll take a bigger squad. I think she's gotten this reputation for not rotating because she doesn't rotate a lot in major tournaments, which is kind of understandable. But I think I've been to kind of friendly games where she's brought in young players. She's given young players chances and played them in friendly games. There was a November camp in 2022 where there was a whole heap of new faces in. So I think you've got to remember she's been around in a time where she hasn't had like a summer off. Like she's had 2 major tournaments back to back. It's very hard for it to do a lot of rotation in those windows. And now with the Nations League, every game is a must win. It makes it even harder to be like, well, I want to rotate players, but if we lose, then it could be my neck on the line. Do you know that kind of way? So
yeah,
I think hopefully we'll see some rotation in these international break, given they are friendlies. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Keats got another call in. Like, to have that experience, she's not some young player who hasn't played in the Lionesses before, so she could offer something a little bit different perhaps.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting. The thing that always shocks me whenever I see her, whenever meeting her in a elevator in Wembley, is just how small she is. Like, she has, but like the power, like she has that real stance where I'm like, I feel like if I tried to knock you over, I would not be able to, but also I'm small and you're small, and like it's just so impressive how like fast you're able to run up and down the pitch. Karen, a word for Sissoko, because we have actually talked quite a lot about her on the podcast before, and just sometimes the chaos that she brings, other times the moments of sheer absolute brilliance. And you'd say that the weekend had to go down in the latter category.
Yeah, I mean, we love her on the podcast because she gives us talking points. But in a game like that, where Arsenal were peppering the penalty area, for her not to give away a penalty is nearly as impressive as her goal, which she took like a seasoned striker. Left foot, didn't think about it. Obviously questions over the goalkeeper, but not to take away from it. Yeah, she's brilliant. She's like a character, and that's what you need. You need that in your team, and especially West Ham have had to dig themselves out now over the last couple of weeks to get out of that relegation battle. And yeah, everyone's pulling for it, and she kind of spearheaded that from the back, and obviously popping up with the goal. And I want more chaos, but it's great for the chaos to be in the other opposition box for 1 week.
Yeah, no, it's not that great. Didn't enjoy that game at all. Sunday was a very conflicting day all around for me. Didn't know how to feel. Upset to pure elation to something in between by the end of it. Well, since she's not here, I will hope, and I assume she listens back. She generally does. But thank you to Emma Carroll for her team of the week. Very much appreciated. And as always, very good. We'll stick it up on our socials as well. So anyone listening, if you want to have any thoughts or comments about it, you can get them into us. Or maybe you think we're missing someone. Not a lot of Irish bias this week in the team. So maybe that's what you're going to see from Emma. Now we are going to look at some of the games that did happen over the weekend. And there is only really one place to start, and that is with the chaos of Arsenal basically handing the title race to either City or Chelsea and being like, here you go, lads, go fight it out.
We're out. Yeah,
we're out of this. So that makes it 3 games that they haven't won in this season, which is generally only teams that have won 2 games or lost 2 games, in a season have ever gone on to win the league. Some really interesting quotes from Jonas Eidevall after the game. He was doing media today ahead of the Conti Cup, and Arseblog and Tim Stillman had done this kind of analysis of how Arsenal dealt with like the defensive block that West Ham had put in, and Tim basically put it to Jonas Eidevall and was like, look, it just seems that Arsenal are really risk adverse, that you're not trying to break it down, that you're not taking these chances when they come, and instead you're playing the safe passes. And it was interesting because Jonas Eidevall was kind of like, I'm questioning myself now that I'm agreeing with journalists. But he also said that he totally agreed with it. So we try too few high risk, high reward passes in the game. There is always a balance in that. How much of a direct, opportunistic team do you want to be? How much control are you looking for? Strange comments, Karen, from a man who's like leading some of the best players in the world to hopefully a league title. You think you would have the faith in there to be in control, but also take those risky passes or just be able to break down a defensive block.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like admitting that they're too structured is a very strange thing for a manager to do when you have players who have plenty of skill and flair. Unless the girls are afraid of him and to break his patterns of play, I just found it strange, and I can't imagine that girls of that level would be afraid to play their own game. I don't know. The comments seem at contrast with everything that they should be as Arsenal Football Club. I didn't understand them, really.
Rachel, did you have any thoughts on them?
I think tactically Arsenal struggle with the back five or a low block. Like, and that's surely going to be something a manager should be able to figure out.
That's
because
personnel, I think. Then you go for pace and width and crosses in the box. And at the start of the season, they were doing too many crosses into the box to no one. And now they're not crossing it.
Like, they lack the creativity they were lacking, but also the problem solving on the pitch. Like, they seem to really struggle. And maybe that, like you say, like, it's almost like they need to be told what to do. I mean, you've got so many good players.
That doesn't happen when Kim Little is playing. I don't know.
No, that's a good shout, actually. And I just felt like sometimes it's a bit like they've too many forwards or attacking minded players all in the box, and it gets really congested. And it drives me mental. These little 1 meter passes to each other back and forth. And you're like, you're not creating any space doing that, because you're all so close to each other that's not like moving defenders, really. And then when they do strike, there's like 3 defenders in front. The amount of times they took a shot on goal from just outside the box with like 4 defenders in front of them. You know, there's that kind of, I don't know, like you say, it's an unusual kind of issue for players of that quality to be having.
I think they commit too many bodies forward and close down their own space. Like, you have to drag a team out. It requires a lot of patience, and it can be very frustrating. But yeah, I think they played into West Ham's hands a little bit, and other teams
100%
learned from that.
Yeah, and like West Ham in the second half particularly, their press was really good. They gave them very little like time on the ball, and it's frustrating to watch. If you're sitting there going, I can see kind of what the issues are, you wonder why the players aren't going, we're creating too much like congestion. We need to get someone out wide, like you said, or Caitlin Ford going out wide, or whoever that might be. I thought the substitutions were unusual, very early to take off both Beth Mead and Miedema. I appreciate that, like, maybe it wasn't working, but Miedema had probably come closest the most out of them, and is generally the kind of creative player to play that through ball or see an opportunity. So I thought that was unusual. I thought even they looked kind of surprised, and it was a very early substitution to be making. It was an early time to kind of roll the dice, I think, and I'm not sure it really worked.
This is something that we've talked about on the podcast quite a bit in terms of like Jonas Eidevall and the choices that he makes and the way the team follows it. And is there a world where, you know, we say that there's a load of really highly talented, really impressive players in that team, also a lot of strong personalities, and that for a team like that to work, they need someone at the top who is feeding down this good information, but maybe he's not tactically telling them the things that they need. And as a result, like in terms of trying to balance both the dynamics of the group and the dynamics of the team, maybe they're not also thinking about, well, this is how it is or isn't working on the pitch, until a game like this comes around, and then it just becomes so glaringly obvious that you literally can't avoid it because you've just thrown away your title race.
Like, I mean, arguably you would say that Arsenal have the best players in the league, but they it's hard to nail down what their style of play really is. I remember against Chelsea, it was so high energy, so brilliant. And then you've got a game like this where it's almost like they expect to win, and they're like, oh God, what do we do? And then there's no one there that really takes the game by the scruff of the neck, like Kim Little or a Katie McCabe would do. We spoke about Katie getting her yellow card so that she wouldn't miss the United game, as what happened last year. And obviously that has backfired as well. So it's about having leaders on the pitch who can bring everyone together and get that energy out of them. And you'd have to wonder why they don't have that. I think that's a dressing room thing. It's nothing to do, for me, the talent on the pitch. I think it's a dressing room thing.
I think as well, like, sometimes I look at him and think tactically he's got something quite wrong. But then other times he will absolutely tactically nail it. Like, and I don't know what it is about, like,
he overthinks it. Does he overthink it?
Maybe, or I think maybe
feels like that.
So I think sometimes he might struggle to change the game plan during the game. You know, you look at someone like a Serena Wiegman, who in that World Cup final went from a 3 at the back to a 4 at the back. Like, halfway through the game, she was willing to throw out what they'd said they were going to do and completely change the approach. And I'm not sure Arsenal are very good at doing that. So if they've got something wrong tactically, sometimes I think they struggle to then address it, say, in the second half. At halftime, they don't, you know, and maybe it's that but I'm a bit reluctant to say he's not tactically good, because there are times where he really is really clever with his tactics and can outsmart very good managers. So it's a bit of a conundrum.
Mm.
I do agree with you on the in-game tactics thing. Like, I think even if you look at the Champions League exit, I think they really struggled then with changing things up during the game and being able to change things to a point where they were back in control. It feels like once they lose control, they really struggle with getting it back. And I've never known if that's because they're too strict on the tactics, or then if there's just not like the proper information being fed through the team of like, okay, well, if this happens, this is what we're going to swap and this is what it's going to look like. And, you know, everyone is drilled in how it will happen. We will see what comes. I mean, they do still have cup games and stuff, but obviously disappointing season,
chance.
all things. A slim chance, yeah. I mean, if Emma Byrne has been saying since the start of the season that she thinks Arsenal are going to win the whole thing, so
Well, she definitely said she said Chelsea wouldn't win.
Huh?
Wicked.
Yeah. Well, she's kind of been on the City bandwagon for the last while in terms of what they've been showing. So yeah, we shall see. We shall see. Move on quickly to Man United versus Brighton, partly because obviously we have our resident fan, but also Brighton, very strange week for them. Rachel, obviously the news last week that no one expected. I saw you on the podcast not being very impressed with them sacking their manager in the fashion that they did, or in the time that they did as well.
Absolutely raging. Like, I literally just done a press conference that afternoon, and then like 4 hours later she was sacked. And then they thought it'd be a good idea to get in the assistant coach, no, the coach in their under-21s academy, who'd literally been told probably the same time that she got sacked that he was now interim manager, and that they do another press conference on Friday at midday. Like, he hadn't even met all the players yet. I don't really know what they hope to achieve from doing that, but the poor guy was thrown under the bus, didn't really have any of the answers, but was the only person that people could ask questions of. So yeah, it was very strange. In the job since April. Brighton were bottom of the table when she took over. They finished 11th, so avoided relegation. 11 new players in the summer, like, to work with, to try and gel together, and effectively had about 5 months of this season. They were in 10th. They were 2 points off 7th. So it just, like, their statement saying, you know, the results didn't match our expectation and our investment. You don't just buy your way up the table. That's not how it works. It doesn't just happen. Like, we've spent all this money, therefore now we're top half the table, you know. So it's the expectation versus reality thing that I think is quite frustrating, because Brighton has always appeared to be a club that understood the long-term project of women's football, and that things don't just happen overnight. You're investing in the stadium, they're investing in facilities. If you want to be top four, you need to be investing in players on the pitch, because that's what's ultimately going to get you there eventually, but not overnight. Not in 5 months.
I would love to know where the disconnect is within the women's side. Because, like, even you see it on the men's side, and they put so much into like young players and developing them, and there's almost like an acknowledgement that, okay, these guys might only be with us for a couple of seasons, but we will get everything out of them for those couple of seasons, and well, our return on investment then whenever they go off will be brilliant. And then, as you say, on the women's side, there's like, they've always seemed so good when it comes to investing in all the things, except like properly given either the manager or the players on the pitch the time to kind of bed in and adjust. And I'd love to know where the disconnect is between, I suppose, the actual football and the vision that's there, because the vision seems so good. And like, I've seen some of the facilities and stuff, and, you know, for a while they were actually kind of rivaling some of the top clubs in terms of the facilities that they were providing. So it seems very strange. It seemed a very cruel way to get rid of a manager one way or the other. I mean, at least give her the weekend and do it on Monday morning or something.
But you've got two cup games now as well. It's like, it's the timing of it. And what's really frustrating is that when they played Manchester United in the reverse fixture, they should have won the match. They deserve to win the match. So, you know, people are trying to throw out the Man City game as an anomaly. That win doesn't count. And it does. Like, you know, I feel like people maybe haven't seen enough of Brighton this season, because, yeah, we talk about their lack of goal expectation and stuff like that, and they've got the lowest in the league and they're conceding goals. But, like, they're playing some good football. They were developing a style. They were... You know, you listen to any of the managers talking about playing against Brighton, and they will say they are really difficult to play. They make it really tough for them.
They all say how difficult it is.
You know, you can't just look at scores and be like, oh, it's
Yeah.
3-0, so they ran over them. You know, it's just, a bit frustrating, I think. I just hope others don't start following down that route.
Yeah, I hope so. Because I don't know. It seems very counterproductive for a club that's had so many opportunities to make something good. Manchester City very nearly looked like they were not going to get a result against Leicester. Leicester holding out until the 82nd minute, and up pops none other than Lauren Hemp and Chloe Kelly, who else at this stage, Karen? I feel like every time we talk about whenever Man City needs someone to come to their rescue, it tends to be those names, unless Bunny Shaw has already fired in a hat trick or something.
Yeah, I just love watching them play, and I think that they maybe the type of player that Arsenal are missing, that they'll have that bit of guile and skill, and they're more direct and aggressive, as opposed to being nicey players. Like, to have the audacity to attempt the finish that Lauren Hemp went for in the 82nd minute, when you were really needed to win that game, because, you know, obviously Arsenal dropping points and trying to keep toe-to-toe with Chelsea. I think that was the difference. Man City don't have stopped kind of panicking when teams frustrate them. And I think they've become really, really consistent. And they didn't have that start of last season, and it cost them. But towards the end of last season, they were really, really good, and they've just held that consistency now. And it's because of Hemp and Kelly, you know, always popping up with something, like, and Bunny Shaw, you know, they just have really consistent performers. And they're really good to watch. And it's been a while since we saw Leicester really hold out in the way that they did. And again, there's a lot of positives for them to take from it. It was And then Chloe Kelly got one straight from a corner. We lived off that for the whole summer when Katie McCabe did it. So got to give her a bit of praise for it.
It was a nice reminder of happier times. Yeah. Rachel, holdout is probably very much the word to describe Leicester. I mean, you look, City had 16 shots, 9 on target. Leicester had 1-0 on target, but they were in it until that very end of the match, even if it didn't look like they were necessarily going to get a dramatic winner.
Yeah, which was a little bit disappointing, because in the reverse fixture, Man City won 1-0. And Leicester played a high risk, high reward type of football. They went really narrow. And, you know, Man City were sometimes catching them over the top, but actually they so could have gotten a point out of that game, if not more. Like, they had more shots on target. It was a more exciting game. And I don't know whether he overthought it or thought, I don't know. You know, I think we kind of saw a little bit with Liverpool when they played Arsenal the other week, where they just didn't do what they did in the first leg and almost kind of just tried to hold out and sit back and maybe catch them on the counter. And yeah, I think having seen the reverse leg of the Man City Leicester game, I maybe expected a little bit more from Leicester, but not to be.
Not to be, unfortunately. And then we had a bit of controversy in Chelsea's 3-0 win over Everton, which sounds like quite a comprehensive showing by Chelsea. It's probably a little unfair to Everton in terms of a scoreline and how they actually played. Karen, bit of talk about refereeing around this one, but I suppose Chelsea also just showing that they are the champions for a reason, and they're good at getting these results no matter what.
Yeah, in terms of the penalties, I didn't know how I felt about either of them, really. When you slow down the first one, the follow through is horrendous, and everything looks worse slowed down. But a penalty possibly could have been given a couple of seconds earlier, you know, for the ball that nearly ripped off them.
I saw a few people saying that, like, they're the sort of ones that when you get them given to you, you're like, yeah, I'll take that. And when they go against you, you're absolutely raging and you're like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I guess it was an honest effort, but it looked horrendous. But the second one, she was dragging out of Ramirez for a long time, but Ramirez was clever, got herself in the box, and that angle is actually very difficult for a referee to make it not look like it was a penalty. So I know there was questions over both of them, but I think the second one was probably fair enough. There wasn't as many remonstrations from Everton at that time. I think they were wrecked from trying to stop Ramirez at that time as well. And then the third goal was a fantastic team goal, and it was a very Chelsea goal, I would say, in that it came from really high intensity pressing from the front players. And yeah, it was just lovely build-up play and a really, really good finish by Aaron Cuthbert.
I feel a bit like Chelsea were always going to win this game, but they don't need help, is the way I looked at it. When I, with the first penalty, it was a bit like, I don't know what else she could have done to avoid that. And it's horrible because it studs into the ankle. But the reason it was there was because when she cleared the ball, it was Johanna Wright and Cannerid's movement that effectively brought her into that situation. Do you know what I mean? So I felt really bad for her. And then I'm pretty sure the ref booked the wrong player. Because it was Wheeler who did it, but I think she booked Payne and then she booked Brosnan as well. The Ramirez one really frustrates me because she's going around absolutely bodying everyone off the ball outside of the opposition box. As soon as she gets in the opposition box, you blow on her, she falls over. So I was that end watching her come towards me, and I was like, oh my God, you absolutely bought yourself that penalty because you looked for the contact. But equally, Wheeler, you go down in a box, you're given the referee a decision to make. And I think I really felt for her because, potentially had there been VAR, whether that would have been turned over or not, I don't know. But it didn't look great from Ramirez because she absolutely flopped. But yeah, Wheeler had a bit of a horrendous night.
Yeah, as your teammate, you're delighted with Ramirez there, though.
They were. Oh my God, the high fives and the I swear she'd scored but yeah, I can understand why Everton were a little bit frustrated because they definitely, I feel like, confused Chelsea in the first half because Chelsea were trying to figure out what the hell they were coming up against because I think they had about two recognisable defenders on the pitch, Everton. They had Hannah Bennison at right wing back and Aurora Gallia left wing back. There's players in quite unusual positions where you're like, what are you doing there? So I think it took Chelsea a little while to figure them out. And I think Chelsea were kind of forcing it a little bit. But then come the second half, they stepped it up another gear.
Away they went, happy as Larry. They sit pretty at the top of the Premier League table, or not the Premier League, the Women's WSL table. Quick one, finally, just a word for Bristol City rescuing that point in a game where, I thought the shots in the City game were mad. 36 shots for Aston Villa, 14 on target, 4 for Bristol, 3 on target. Any points at the moment for them, Rachel, really, really important with where they are in the table. And also just for their mentality. Aston Villa, we've seen them do some weird things this season that no one expected from them, but Bristol won't care. Any sort of points that they get at this stage is going to be counted as a positive, you'd imagine.
Yeah, no, I was worried about Aston Villa because obviously losing Laura Benkilde-Brown to Man City on deadline day and Lucy Staniforth being ruled out for the rest of the season, I was worried about them. And actually they played some really good football, which is surprising then that they came out with the draw. But Bristol have a serious determined doggedness about them. They have so much experience in this league coming back from being a goal down or 2 goals down. The fact they managed to hold on and get a point out of it is massive. Lauren Smith has said every game's a cup game. They basically got, then they lost the West Ham game, they were like, we've got 10 cup games. And it felt like that, the stress in the last 90 seconds. And I'm not particularly partial to either team, but the stress in the last 90 seconds, there was a melee in the box. There was a definite handball from Brooke Aspen as well.
I was so convinced that someone's heart was going to be broken.
Oh my God. Shea Yanez was unbelievable in goal for Bristol. So those kind of games will be massive for them. We talked, I know in other podcasts and stuff, we've talked a lot about Bristol's performances and how at times they've played well and they've done things well. It doesn't matter anymore. They'll just play. It doesn't matter. It's not going to be pretty football. If they've to throw themselves on the goal line, they'll do it. And I think they're more than ready to do it for the next 9 games. And they have no cup games to worry about because they've not progressed in any of the cups. So maybe that's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe that's exactly what they need to focus and, push on. And as we've seen, 1 or 2 bad injuries to any of those other teams that are down there with them, that could be all it takes for Bristol to go on a bit of a run. And all of a sudden they're not in the relegation zone anymore. I kind of feel like in my head, I know they're the utter underdogs of the season, but everything that they've done with some of the best turnouts in Europe and just the general spirit of the team, I really, really want them to stay up. Saying that, I don't know who I want to go down, but I just feel like they've brought a lot to the league so far, and I would be 100%. Sad to see them go. And then just to quickly run through what the other results were that we sadly don't have time to get to. We also had Liverpool 1, Tottenham won in a game that I think both sides seemed, from what they were saying post-match, quite relieved to come out the other side of, not totally destroying. Karen, are you waving at me there, or are you just generally...
Yeah, I think Liverpool, Matt Beard was disappointed, I think, in his post-match, but I think a point after some of the results they've had recently it's a bit steadying for them as well. So, again, Tottenham have been scoring goals for fun. Now they've been conceding them for fun as well, but I think to only concede one against that Tottenham team and to show the resilience that they did, I think it's a better result for Liverpool than Tottenham.
I think Liverpool and Tottenham just want to be besties in the league, because it was 1-1 in the first match, it was 1-1 in the second match. They're on the same points still. I think similar kind of journeys, the two teams. Both have had some big scalps early on, knocking on the door of trying to get into top 5, and you just can't separate them right now.
Yeah, and also two teams that can often go on a run and you think, oh, this is finally the year that they've kind of got themselves together and we're going to see it, and then it either disappears or it happens towards the end of the season. Yeah, well, we shall see what happens. Rachel, as you said, there's lots of cup games coming up. We have County Cup midweek, and then we have the FA Cup this weekend. And then next weekend in the WSL, we have the Kathleen and Karen derby with Arsenal facing off against Man United. And then the big one of Chelsea and City, which is going to be very, very interesting. Can't wait to see that. Rachel, which are you heading to, or how many are you heading to over the next coming week?
I think London City Lionesses versus Arsenal tomorrow, and then I'm going to do the Leicester game, the Spurs game on Saturday, and then the Arsenal Man City game on Sunday.
Very good. Well, we look forward to seeing all your coverage. If people want to find you, where can they go?
We're at Girls in the Ball on all of the social media platforms.
Great stuff. Karen, thank you as always. Hope you don't have too big a head after spending the day hobnobbing with the president, and I hope training goes well over the next while in the lead up to that, all injury-free and running smoothly. Just a quick reminder as well, as we said on the podcast last week, the Irish Women's National Team Supporters Club are still looking for members. So those are open until the 23rd of February. You can register your interest via a link on their Instagram page at Ireland WNTSC. And they're working with the FAI on this. There's loads of great perks to come if you do want to sign up. So do definitely express your interest. I was chatting to them last week, and there's actually been an insanely big response to this. So if you do sign up, you're going to have lots of new buddies for any and all matches, which will be very good for the Wales game in Tala and whatever is to come for the rest of the year. The COYGIG Pod and Off the Ball is sponsored by Cadbury, official snack partner of the Republic of Ireland women's national team. We will see you all next week.
The COYGIG Pod on Off the Ball, in association with Cadbury, official snack partner of the Republic of Ireland women's national team.